Welcome back to another episode of Built and Backed. Joining me today is Courtney Greenwood, the founder of Greenwood Marketing Collective, where she offers a fractional CMO and product marketing leadership for tech startups and SaaS companies that are mission driven. With over 15 years of experience driving go to market strategies for technology solutions, including AI powered platforms, EHR systems, and educational software, Courtney has a proven track record of delivering measurable results through strategic product launches and comprehensive sales enablement. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. This has been a long
Yeah,
time coming to have you
it
on. So
has.
I'm very excited to dive into all things go to marketing strategy. But
Yeah,
before we go into that, I would love to have you share with the listeners more about who you are and what you do.
sure. So as Ashley gave me a lovely introduction, I have founded and owned Greenwood Marketing Collective. We are about to go into our third year in business. I focus mostly on working with tech companies and or mission-driven organizations, helping them with their messaging, positioning, their go-to-market strategy, and overall general marketing consulting as well.
And how did you get into what you do? Like, I'm curious to hear what your career journey has been like to bring you to
Yeah.
Greenwood Marketing Collective today.
I will always say, someone told me a long time ago that what you went to college for is not what you're actually going to do when you get out in the real world. And I thought that was absolutely crazy, but it's very true. So I studied journalism undergrad. I quickly learned I didn't want to be a literal journalist, but I've always loved writing. I've always loved creative endeavors. And I guess I also am a planner too. So my career jumped into working at a psych hospital locally called Butler Hospital as a grant writer, again, writing, next community relations, and all of it kind of trickled into the healthcare realm. Again, mission driven, trying to help people. I didn't want to provide direct patient care, but I wanted to help empower those who do provide patient care in a way. So, through these various experiences, it led me to one organization where I was a product marketer, and I really fell in love with that aspect of marketing and also in the tech area because you really have your hands in a little bit of everything. You get a very high level view of what's going on in an organization. And I always joke that you're kind of like the social butterfly of the organization because you have to have those relationships with everyone across the organization. Um, so, working in product marketing for almost 15 years for various SaaS companies, I was just thinking to myself, do I need to only do these skills and work with big, large corporations? Or can I take these outside of there and be a consultant? Can I bring these to startups? Can I bring this to other kinds of agencies who could benefit from the same type of like launch, go to market, messaging, positioning, customer journey work? And the answer is yes. Yes, I can. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years.
And I would love to hear, because I feel like go-to-market strategy is something that not every startup prioritizes, but they should, as we both know.
Yeah.
And so when a startup is getting ready to go to market, like what exactly needs to be in their strategy? And what are some things they should be thinking about?
Oh, great question. Because there is a misconception about like what is go to market, right?
Mhm.
Everyone hears go to market and they hear market and they think marketing, which is a huge piece of it. They think launch, product launch, solution launch, company launch. And it is that, but there's a whole other back end side of it, which is the operationalizing of whatever you are launching. So
Mhm.
while yes, you need a solid PR plan, your marketing plan, like how are you announcing to the world that your solution exists? But you also need to know internally that everyone's singing from the same sheet of music. You need to ensure that your sales team knows how to talk about it. They know how to demo it. If you are, still small, but you have some customer success or customer service, they need to know how to troubleshoot it. You need to know, how am I taking money, right? Do we have a CRM solution? What are the codes? How are we operationalizing it on every single level? What are the contracts? Is legal involved? Like there's so many pieces to the puzzle to actually get something into market and make it fly. You could launch into market without thinking through all these things, but I would not recommend it. That's how places run into legal problems quickly. You instantly burn trust. You instantly just kind of fall on your face. So, plan ahead is my best advice.
Yeah, and I want to
Yeah.
reiterate something that you said that was a really good point that I think many people forget about, which is the idea that go to market isn't just limited to your marketing. Like you
Yeah.
worded that perfectly. Like there's so many other components that need to be thought about, like
Yeah.
the customer service descriptions and how sales talks about the company and
Yeah.
product. So I love
Hmm.
that you shared that because it is really important to
Yeah.
know
And
that
there's
there's so
also,
much more.
sorry.
No, that's
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah. And also there's like the market research. What's your total addressable market? Who is your ideal customer profile? Who are your key competitors and how do you want to take them on directly? I mean, there's a lot of different things to consider. And another angle too is, what if you're starting a new category,
Mhm.
something completely different? How are you going to get people to understand what your product does if it's never existed before? So there's just so many things, and I feel like I could just sit here and continue to list off things, almost like a checklist of everything you need to consider and do. But there are kind of like your tried and true things you always do, but then there's also this custom things you need to do based on what the product and the market is as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And with that being said, what are some mistakes that you see startups making when it comes to their go-to-market strategy? Whether it's something that they did and shouldn't have done, or whether it's something that they didn't do but should have.
Uh, the biggest one that pops to mind is figuring out who your customer is and who it is not. So I hear too many times people say, everyone's our customer. Even if it's in healthcare, they'll say like, well, any doctor could use this. They could use parts of it. Any patient could use part of this. And it's like, well, no, to really hone in to make your product get more traction, you need to focus on who you're going to blast it out to. And that's a huge mistake, is just throwing the spaghetti against the wall, if you will, about who your audience is, but really honing it down to probably like a few key personas, at least for your launch, to test things out. Another uh, large mistake sometimes people make is saying that they're going to do, like, I call it like a soft launch versus a hard launch, right? Like a soft launch is sort of like you slow roll into market and then you kind of test it out. So you might have X number of marketing dollars, and versus a hard launch where you're just going all in. You're like, this is the date in the sand. We are blasting it on, this is exaggerated, but like a Super Bowl ad and campaign. You're putting it all over social media. You have a PR blitz and you're going to do some like in-person events. You have influencers going, like, you're going all in on one moment. With a soft launch, especially as a startup, you might want to go to a few target markets first, maybe a few big cities where you want to see and test the market. Say, is my marketing resonating? Does the messaging hit? Do people understand the product the way we're talking about it? Do they understand the UI and UX of it? Like what are the pieces? And also, this is important if you haven't done enough beta testing too, to know that it's not going to fail.
Yeah.
So that's why I am always a fan of a soft launch versus a hard launch. But hard launches definitely have their place too, especially with more established brands. But soft launches really give you the moment and the time to learn as you go and do it more methodically and thoughtfully versus just, going out there and trying to make a moment but having it miss the mark.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good reminder because especially for founders who, of course, are really excited and passionate
Of
about their
course.
idea, like they're
Yeah.
just so inclined to just go right in. But
Yeah.
as you shared, that soft launch or beta period is really what is the most important for being able to test the waters, ensure that you're hitting the mark, and not spending all this time, money, and resources on something that's never going to work.
Yeah. And that's still, like, in my opinion, part of like your lab period, right? You're still getting to test things out and figure it out. And you also are going to get great stories during that period, which is just marketing gold. You're going to get testimonials and quotes, maybe even like a case study. And so all of those pieces that you're learning as you do all of this like soft launching, you can then throw that into later on and really make a huge splash at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when a company is thinking about their soft launch slash beta launch, like they're listening to this episode and they're like, okay, Courtney has a point. We need to slow things
Yeah.
down and do a phased approach. What should go into the beta launch? Like, of course, this is more broad and will depend on the startup, but like, what are some things that they should consider?
I would say for a beta or soft launch, you want to ensure that you have, your website up and running, the teams ready and trained, like I was mentioning, a social media presence started before you actually launch. And so it's not, you don't say like, hey, I'm launching December 1st. I'm going to start my account on December 1st. No, like you want to be starting to load content in before that. So when people look you up, there's something there to validate your existence. You're not just some fly by night thing, right? Because it's so easy nowadays to be for people to stand up fake companies. So you want to make sure people understand like you are a true company, you are backed, you are built, you are ready to go. So those pieces you really have to have. And again, like the operationalizing of things, right? You want to make sure your website is tested, the sign up works, they get into platform, you have some type of educational piece there that's showing you like a tutorial of how to use the product. Those sorts of pieces to make sure that the customer experience, because the customer journey really matters always, but especially for those first users, because people talk and with things on the internet and in our viral age, having a miss can really be a big miss at times. So those are key pieces I would say, like at a startup phase, you want to consider. And again, like maybe really looking at like a smaller grouping of people, whether that's by user or by location.
Yeah. And that makes me
Yeah.
think too, the idea of building a wait list when it comes to launch. And that's something that a
Yeah.
lot of startups think about is like, well, how do I build a wait list? How do I get people excited to be potentially part of the beta or
Hmm.
a part of like the
Yeah.
actual launch when it happens? And so my question for you is what you would recommend about how to build that wait list. And then
Yeah.
as like a second part to that, what startups should do if they've been trying to build a wait list and nothing's
Hmm.
really happening.
Yeah. I love this question because I love like a teaser moment. I think it's
Yeah.
really fun. So, in marketing, it's like you have your soft or hard launch, like big date. And then as you continue, or I'm sorry, as you go before that date, you can start teasing, right? So you can make it be very like what's going to come next, what's happening. Like you can create a whole narrative around it to make it sound like you are launching something like the next rocket to the moon. um but you send out emails, you do social media, and through that you always tie them back to a landing page, a form fill of some sort, so you build your wait list. And then you can even let people know you're going to do it in waves, right? So you can then also do like on the back end product load testing. Can your product support the people? So like maybe 50 to 100 one week. Next week you do 300 people. And while you're doing this, you're also learning lessons along the way about the onboarding process. What issues are they having tech with your actual technology? What aren't people getting intuitively that you thought they were going to get? So then you can go back to all of your like training manuals, your FAQs, your customer support team, and make sure everyone there understands those pieces. So like teasing it out ahead of time to build that wait list is important. From a marketing perspective, I would love to throw out there about like influencers. And I don't mean like sending out products to skincare and those sorts of things. I mean like sometimes it's the new thing is really like micro influencers, right? Getting sure that they have access early so that they can get there and play with it. Giving them those like discount codes for people to use it, or say like, hey, use this code, get on the wait list for early access to X, Y, and Z product. There's a lot of different tactics you can do like that, and that will maybe help you have a semi like viral moment. There's no, I mean, everyone knows there's no way to like predict something going viral, but sorry guys, to burst people's bubbles, there's
Yeah.
no way to make something go viral. That's just something that happens organically. Even though people say organic social is dead, but viral posts are still organic usually. So just making sure that like you set it up so that like you're ready to capture everyone to get on your wait list to have them then become your users.
Definitely. And I
Yeah.
love the mention of influencers and the piece of, and the idea of like them being thought leaders. So, like, I love
Yeah.
that you shared that part about like not necessarily sending out
Mhm.
products, but like connecting with and partnering with trusted voices in the industry and being
Mhm.
able to tap into their credibility to
Yeah.
drive organic exposure for your startup. And so I think that's such a great idea and something that startups sometimes overlook because, as you shared,
Hmm.
their first place their mind goes to is like, oh, I have to have a physical product, but that's not always the
Yeah.
case.
No, it's definitely not. And to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, when you're talking about like social media, thought leadership, is also like blogs aren't dead. Like blogging is still a really great thing to do for SEO and a great way to make thought leadership be seen more. Whether you're sharing blogs with other people, trading them off, LinkedIn is a great way to share this information and get more people, especially when a lot of like SaaS products usually are somewhat like more for a certain industries, really like more of a professional setting where you're trying to launch. Is a really great resource there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And when a startup is getting ready to go to market and launch, like when is
Hmm.
the time that they should be thinking about bringing in someone like yourself to support them?
As early as possible, I would say. So, I mean, once you have something that you are pretty sure, like you have a working demo, or even before that, when you're having a little bit of like the proof of concept part, it might not be that you have someone like myself in the weeds with you every single day, but you want to start pulling someone in so that like you're hearing having us being like product marketers, fractional CMOs, hear what's going on from the beginning. So we can kind of start in the back of our minds, like crafting a story and a narrative, starting to think about who your audience is, trying to think about what the best strategies are based on who your customers are. Because really, like in the beginning, for your first group of people, like even though it is marketing, you are pitching
Mhm.
from a startup perspective. You're pitching to your audience at that point. And that's not always easy. So working with someone like myself, I mean, I volunteer with a lot of local and regional like accelerators and incubator programs. So I'm always talking to early stage startups or some backed startups, and working on their pitch decks and how they're trying to get their first users. And the earlier they start working on the story, because again, I should have talked about this earlier, but like throughout everything here, you want to have a cohesive story and storytelling aspects behind your brand for a startup. So again, just all that to answer your question, Ashley, is that like you need to bring someone in earlier, but as you get closer to launch, the work is going to get more intense. So then you're going to have someone who's going to be more in the weeds with you day to day versus, a year out, you probably have to have someone like myself in the weeds every single day. But like 6 to 9 months out, it's going to get a little more heavy in there. And then you're just off to the races. So
Totally, yeah.
yeah.
And that is the perfect reminder that you need to consider bringing someone in sooner rather than later because I think we've all been in situations where someone gets brought in at the very last second and
Yeah.
I don't want to say the damage is done at that point, but there's like so many missed opportunities that weren't addressed or taken advantage of leading up to that point because you waited until it was too late. And so I think it's really important to make sure that you have the capital to bring in a professional if you don't have someone
Yeah.
in-house who can do it.
Hmm. I think it's very important. And, if you have some capital and you don't have enough yet, but you need someone just to consult, bring in a consultant just to help out and guide everybody because it's very important to do that. The other plea I'll make to the industry, because I've just seen this so many times in my career, is that the day the product is done is also the launch day, and they do not have to coincide. They do not have to be the same day. Just because your code is complete, it's tested, and the beta time is done, of course, you want to get into market ASAP because you want to make money. And I get it, right? Like we live in a capitalist society, we all want to make money. But I will tell you, if your launch plan is not ready, if all your teams are not prepared, and you are so stuck to a date for whatever reason, and there is no good reason behind the date, just move the date.
Yeah.
Whether it's a week or 2 weeks. I'm not saying move it 6 months. I'm just saying you need to be able to give a little bit of that leeway because in the long run, if you have a few extra weeks or days testing or getting together your marketing, your website, making everything functions perfectly, and all of the pieces you're putting out to the world they coincide, then you will have a more successful launch. Soft or hard launch, you'll be more successful. So don't just be like, this is the day because the product is done. Put it out to the masses. Like, no, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. You know what they say, good things come to those who wait. So
Right?
I
Yeah,
feel
it's
like
like
that's a good reminder.
just a smidge of patience. I know, especially like in the startup world, it's a million miles an hour, and that's I think why we all love it too, is because there's always something new. You're learning, you're moving, and so it's hard to make this plea to say, can we just slow down for a quick moment? Because it's not like slowing down. It's just everyone's still moving super fast to accomplish whatever marketing aspects or internal organizational pieces that need to be completed. It's just saying that product being done does not always equal out to market the same exact moment. And
Correct.
it can be a benefit.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
on the topic of audience, because I know we chatted about that earlier and I want to circle back on that. I feel like oftentimes, not oftentimes, but sometimes startups might forget that their audience goes way beyond their potential users or potential customers. Like those aren't the only
Hmm.
people they need to be speaking to. And so I'd love to
Yeah.
hear from your professional experience and perspective, like why startups need to be thinking about speaking to investors through their marketing and speaking
Hmm.
to potential employees through their marketing and any other audiences that you think are relevant that should be staying top
Yeah.
of mind.
Yeah, that's a great point because it isn't just your end user, it's also perhaps those who are impacted by what the end user does with it, right?
Mhm.
It's also maybe colleges and universities having professors know about it, having researchers know about your product, because even though you have an end user, and I'm sorry, I always say researchers in hospital, like my mind's always kind of like start going down a healthcare slant a bit, but it just they're not always your end users that are going to also benefit and be your ideal customer, because if people are using it to learn in universities and colleges, they are probably going to become users once they're out, but they might be early users there. They might just know it exists. The audience also, like if you're doing sponsorships and things, like people might not use your product, but they're going to see the name of your product and you're going to have brand recognition there too. So the audience isn't always just about like your actual paying customer. It's your industry, it's the general populace around you as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
And as we get into 2026, I'd love to hear your perspective or predictions on where you see things shaping up and within your work for startups and where you see things going.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot in 2026 that's going to be focused on education. And what I mean by that is like edutainment. I mean that from like a go-to-market perspective, is that the way we promote products is shifting a little bit as our different generations and our consumer generations kind of change, right? So we have more of the boomers are aging out. So there's certain areas and ways of marketing tactics, and we speak to things that aren't going to be as relevant, and Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are of consumer ages, they are very different consumers than even like myself as a millennial is, right? It's there's a shift to not being so connected all the time. It's a shift to going back to analog a bit. So I think that we're going to see startups going back to more of experiential marketing tactics, in-person events. In 2025, we've talked a lot about community across the board. And I think that's going to continue into 2026, talking about community. And so that's one thing you can do around your products and your launches is create community, create evangelists around your product, people who love it, but it also gives them a way to connect with other like-minded or people with similar interests and hobbies as them. Because if you both like a certain product, there's a reason you guys have something in common right there.
Mhm.
So that helps build a community and connection, because what I've seen in startup industries and in corporate consulting work I've done is the fact that because of 2020 and everything since then, people went super digital, right? Super Zoom focused and working asynchronously. And there's a lot of a switch to trying to add in more in-person events because there's loneliness and people want to connect with other people.
Mhm.
So I think leveraging that to bring back going to pitch nights for startups to go be featured there, go with the people, go with the masses, and just like it takes more time. Someone takes some more marketing dollars to get to have like a booth someplace or spend the time there, but really that's going to go very far when it comes to what your outcomes will be versus saying putting that money into another pay-per-click kind of campaign on social media, or having ads follow people around. Like, we all know how that works, right? We're all kind of tired of that. It's been some years. So I'm personally also excited to see like what 2026 brings, because you know, I'm interested to see what happens with social media, because I've been reading some reports where they're saying, LinkedIn and Instagram are the big ones right now. And then some other ones to watch, like sleeper ones, are like Threads. But I haven't seen a lot happen there yet. But I'm interested to see how it progresses.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up community because we both are big fans of community and have also seen
Yeah.
how important it is.
Hmm.
And I think you brought up a really good point that the dollars you might spend on attending an event or having a booth on an event can do more for you in the long run, especially if you're
Yeah.
consistently showing up in like the same types of communities and going to the same types of events where it's like people will start to notice that. They'll start to say, that's Courtney
Yeah.
from Greenwood Marketing. Like they'll remember that. And I think
Hmm.
that is what really makes a lasting impression for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's an old tried and true thing, but like half the battle is showing up, right?
Hmm.
That is so true in life. Like, it's actually following through and doing what you're going to say you're going to do. And that's why a lot of companies don't make it out of their first couple of years, is because it's hard. Like,
Yeah.
owning, you and I both know this, it's hard to continually show up and push and drive. And if you have a startup and you have a small team, it's easy to burn out that team. So just continually showing up, staying motivated, and taking care of yourself mentally and physically is so important, to ensure that like you are there for the long haul of what you want to accomplish from your organization. Because end of the day, we all started our companies, whether it's a startup tech company or consulting, marketing firms, we all started it for our own specific reason and mission statements. What is our core ethos of why we're doing it? And we all saw some problem that we wanted to solve out there in the market, and that's why we're here. So I think keeping yourself grounded and remembering that is so important, to make sure that you don't burn out.
100%. And on the
Yeah.
topic of community, as you shared as well, you share a lot of your time towards volunteering through incubators and accelerators. And so,
Yeah.
from your perspective, being an expert who's kind of a part of that incubator accelerator, when do you think is a good time for a startup to consider joining one? Like when it makes the most sense and why they're so valuable?
Um, I would say early is great. Um, a lot of times these incubators and startups, and I can like name drop if you want to, the ones I'm involved with, but they it's at the idea stage. It's that proof of concept. Some of them still support people. It's when you're working on your branding and messaging. It's when you're trying to figure out your pricing and your financials. It's your pitch deck is a huge part of it. I can share that, I am involved with E for All, and I believe that they do have like an organization in various states. I'm involved with the one out of Providence. And I go in and I help with the branding and messaging, and I do a session once a cohort for 2 hours. And the entrepreneurs in there are at various stages. Some have branding colors picked out, others don't. So we go through a color exercise. Some people know what their five like pillars as a company are. So we kind of work through all those pieces. I'm also involved with Social Enterprise Greenhouse in Rhode Island, which is a social enterprise mission driven organization. And as an advisor there as well. And I work one on one with one entrepreneur per cohort. And then another great one I'm involved with out of the Boston area is Prepare for VC, with their leaders, Steve Vilkas and Jason Krause. They have a great program, or several programs, where really they take the founder at whatever stage they're in and they plug them into the program. And they have two kind of tracks, where one is very customized for that exact founder, or they have another track where you can kind of get thrown into a cohort. So you're doing it with other people too. So you're all learning together. But again, like when I'm involved with these different organizations, I see people in there who just need to polish their pitch deck. I see other people who don't even know what their value proposition is yet. Or you have some people who are really ready to start building their go to market because they have capital, they have the rest of it figured out, and now they just need to figure out how to tell the world.
Yeah.
So it really kind of varies. And I think it doesn't always have to be that it's first time founders that need these things, because I see founders who are done this a few times over and they still need some support, right?
Yeah,
Because sometimes it's just trying to figure out how to speak about your own idea. And it can be really hard because you feel like you get it, but sometimes verbalizing it isn't as easy or you're too close to it. So you need outside support to help you really make it fly.
definitely. And
Yeah.
that is the perfect way to segment into the next question I have for you is that being
Yeah.
able to surround yourself with people who inspire you and motivate you and give you so much creativity and whatnot is really important. And
Yeah.
so, with that being said, I'd love for you to give a shout out to someone who's doing something cool in tech right now that you're really admiring. So, it could be a VC, could be a founder, community builder, really anyone is fair game.
Wow. Yeah. I think I would shout out the same group I just did, which is Prepare for VC with Steve and Jason there. They've been doing this for a while, since I believe like the mid 2010s, they've been doing this, but they're very devoted to their founders. They're very devoted to the tech space, especially in Boston. They're involved with tech stars as well. They work with like the local universities like Suffolk. And I can't say enough things about their program that I would definitely encourage people. People come onto our weekly pitch practice and they're not just from like the Boston area. They're from literally international. We've had people from overseas sign on and they practice their pitch for 2 or 5 minutes with us. And it's almost like, I don't want to say Shark Tank because there's no funding going on, but it gets a little sharky. I want to say it's like loving critical feedback where we'll be like, no, you have missed this, you missed the boat on that. And if you ever do join anyone, I can share a link, Ashley, if you want to it, so you can
Yeah,
drop it. But I'm always in there being like, you don't have a good story. I need a story. Where are the people in this? Like, I know what your
yeah.
product does. That's great, but how does it solve a problem for humans? Like, you need to have the human piece about it. And I'm always trying to go back to that storytelling because at the end of the day, that's what people connect to. So again, they're absolutely great. And I love working with them. It's a really great people.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Courtney, this has been such a fun episode, and I've so enjoyed having you on the
Yeah.
show to talk about all things go to market. And now I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect.
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn, Courtney Greenwood. My website, greenwoodmarketingcollective.com, or I'm very active on Instagram at Greenwood Marketing Collective. So follow me, drop me a message, say hi. I'd love to chat.
Amazing. And I'll include all those
Yeah.
places in the show notes for our listeners. But Courtney, thank you so much for coming on this week's episode of Built and
Yeah.
Backed.
Thanks for having me, Ashley. Great chatting.